Briann Bardsley is joining us. She is Communications Associate for In Defense of Christians. Briann, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Annie. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So IDC is launching a new series on religious prisoners of conscience. So tell us a little bit about this project and what you're hoping to accomplish with it.
Absolutely. So for every month of the remainder of 2022, IDC is going to be highlighting a specific current or former religious prisoner of conscience story by sharing a 3 to 5 minute video and by coming on your show to share about that POC's story. Both highlights being given by either the POC themselves or somebody who's very close to their story. These prisoners of conscience come from predominantly Middle Eastern or African countries, as those are obviously the areas that IDC works in and for, but there will be variation in countries, gender, denominations of faith, and the outcome of their cases, which will be highlighted through the sharing of their story.
Awesome.
These videos and interviews will be shared on our social media pages, so we encourage all of your listeners to follow IDC as we share those stories and other updates for the remainder of the year.
Awesome, and I'm really excited to hear that you're including the Sunrise Morning Show in this project because these are the kinds of stories that we need to hear, particularly on Catholic radio. Can you give us a sense what kind of stories will we expect to see highlighted during this series, Briann?
Yeah, so a couple of the stories that we're going to be highlighting are that of Leah Sheribu, one of the 110 girls who's kidnapped from their school in Nigeria in 2018, and the only one who is yet to be set free. Another one is that of Jimmy Lai, who is currently being held in Chinese prison for tirelessly advocating for freedom of religion in China. And finally, Pastor Andrew Brunson, who has actually been on the show before, and thankfully is one of the cases we will highlight where the individual has been freed and allowed to return home.
Wow. And so let's talk a little bit more about Pastor Brunson. Give us, for those that may not remember him, tell us a bit about his story.
Yeah, absolutely. So Pastor Brunson, along with his wife, were living in Turkey for over 20 years, shepherding a local church who was working predominantly with Turks of a Muslim background who had become believers. In the process of routinely applying for a renewal of his visa, Pastor Brunson was asked to come in for questioning and was immediately detained. He was routinely denied access to an attorney, to a U.S. consulate officer, and even members of his church who brought him food and water were turned away. He's accused of being part of an opposition movement and placed in deplorable conditions, including being placed right alongside members of the group he was accused of belonging to, being held incommunicado in cells that were filled to 3 times their allotted capacity and sometimes only being allowed to leave his cell once a week.
Wow.
Finally, and after 18 months of being held in these conditions, his first court hearing occurred in April of 2018 with subsequent hearings in the following months. On July 25th of 2018, Pastor Brunson was released to house arrest due to health concerns, and on October 12th, he was convicted of aiding terrorism, although that was simply a cover for the Turkish government and them not wanting him to further Christianity in the country. But thankfully, on October 12th, he was also immediately released the same day and was able to come back to the U.S.
Wow. He has such an incredible story that hopefully he can come on the show sometime soon. I understand he just had surgery and wasn't able to join us this morning, but very glad to get to talk to you in his stead, Briann. And if listeners want to follow this new series on religious prisoners of conscience, how do they find you?
On our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter, and then also on our YouTube page.
And you can find In Defense of Christians linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. Briann Bardsley, really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.